Thank Hello. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. How are ya?
There we go. I was hoping to hear everybody today. I had some trouble yesterday.
And Christy, I just wanted to let you know that Jordan texted me later
Yeah.
and he did make a mistake. He is a DI.
Okay. Shocker.
Yeah, I was not buying the C at all either. So
No.
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know him, but he's a surefire AI,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was funny that he goes, yeah. So
Well, he's very likable and super, he even said extroverted and all that, but he's one of those people you want to be with, right?
oh yeah, there's a
And that's
party
that
wherever
real,
he goes.
yeah, real nice personality. So,
Yes, yeah.
anyway.
Unlike this guy at the bottom here with the mustache.
Oh, who's this? This is, your boyfriend?
My friend. My friend.
Yeah.
Why can't I just sneak in?
Oh no, Tom, I've got your number.
Oh,
We saw you
that's
coming.
yeah, that goes both ways, Renee.
I know. I know. Yeah, Tom and I worked together for a little bit. Yeah, for about, I don't know if you know, I was team leader in Gateway for about a year.
Mhm.
And then I was actually the productivity coach up there for about 3 years, I think.
Oh, wow. So you know Joran Christensen?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Yeah,
He's my friend from life. Went to Indonesia with him. He used to be a pastor. So,
oh, absolutely. And I know he went back to it for a while. I've been following him. Yeah, he married Wendy.
yes.
And I mean, yes, I coached him when he first got out here from Colorado.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know him very well.
Good.
Probably
Yeah.
not as well as you do, but I know him. Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
surprised to see that he's back. I'm delighted that he's back.
Yes, me too. He's been a lot of different places, but he belongs here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now did he? I mean, I know that he was not doing real estate because he was pastoring in a church. Is he? But I noticed he's back in real estate. Is he
Yeah.
still
So
pastoring?
I think he is working also at like a grave lot plot place, something like that. And then he does services for
Okay.
funerals. That's what I understood last time I talked to him. And then he always kept his license because he has a million contacts because he's a head guy trusted in a church, lots of people. So he does really
Absolutely.
well there. So yeah, I didn't know he was like back in like full time. So my last interaction with him was based off of, you got your background, Laura. Funny. Yeah, so he's just, that was the last time I saw or talked to him. So that was my understanding. If he's in full time again, I'm not aware of it. So
Well, I don't think he's full time, but I know Laura announced his joining the team again. So
good.
Who's that?
Joran.
Oh, yeah, he's actually just a referral agent with us. At
Oh,
this
okay.
Yeah.
I follow what happens up there.
I bet you do.
I do.
You just can't get away from that woman.
No, you can't. I'm like a bad penny or bad
I don't
train.
know.
Bad penny.
I'm excited about this class. Is Brian still teaching?
I am texting him right now. I know he was planning on it.
Yeah, it's like, where the hell are you, Brian? I shouldn't be so, Brian, we request your attendance.
Cut the guy some slack. Come on.
No.
Oh, come
No.
on, ladies.
Nope. I don't cut very many people very much slack. And I don't get much in return, so.
Yeah, but you do give out lotto tickets. Thanks for the tip yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I actually did that for a an agent, a broker open to get people to come. I don't know if you guys have a problem, but especially here, Watsonville's like the South 40. I mean, people will not go to Watsonville, even though we've now merged the two associations in that. So that was my way of getting people to go, was to give out lottery tickets to agents who actually ventured all the way down to Watsonville.
Well, we do that all the time for broker opens. I just never heard of it for a regular open house. That's why I was shocked.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it would absolutely work, you know, if you, you know, but they'd have to sign in. And, you know, what I would do is you know, even maybe a gift certificate or something like that, if they sign in and you have a drawing at the end of the thing and you've gotten all their names and numbers.
Yeah, you might even give out 20 lotto tickets for the raffle, you know.
Exactly, exactly. That's one way of doing it.
Yeah, I heard that
Brian,
also.
I like your t-shirt, Brian. Very nice.
Thank
About
you.
He's about as subtle as a 2-ton truck.
I have what you focus on expands onto, oh, don't focus on the toilet paper.
Yeah, well, based on where that is, I'm sorry.
We would really like to focus on toilet paper right now, wouldn't we?
Yes, down to 7 rolls.
Yeah, my wife and I just finally found some the other day at Walmart, so we were pretty happy. She bought a bunch right before this whole thing happened, without even knowing we were going to need it, and then we felt like we were okay until about 2 weeks ago, and we started to get nervous. So
Yeah, the
So
best way to
Bri-
do it is go like at 6 o'clock. My husband went over to Safeway like at 6 o'clock one morning.
Yeah.
And they had a pallet full of them, and it's like, you know, load up now.
Right.
Yeah, you have to go first thing in the morning.
I don't
Okay,
understand
Brian,
that.
so it's 9 a.m. And if you don't mind starting, I'm putting a few instructions in the chat. If you don't mind starting by introducing yourself, and then you know how to share your screen and everything, right?
I do, yeah. So I've never done a class like this before, so kind of bear with me, and I think I'll get it figured out.
You'll be awesome. And I'll be hiding in the background, but if you need me, just holler, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thank you.
here, let me pull up the class here first. Practice this earlier, so I'm not as tech savvy as some might think. All right. Where is? There we go. Okay. Is everybody seeing Ignite at this point?
No,
So
did you do share screen?
I did.
There we go. Now we're seeing it.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Did not click hard enough. Okay, perfect.
And Brian, it's kind of hard to see the chat room when you've got your slideshow up. So if you can have Renee or Tom or somebody kind of monitor the chat room for you, that'll
Yeah.
be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is Renee here right now? I didn't even see.
Renee Mello is with us.
I wouldn't have missed this for the world.
All right. Well, so I'll do my best. We're gonna make it through the material, and then I'll kind of share a little bit of what I do differently, or how I do things. Not really differently, but what I do specifically. So yeah, some of you know who I am. My name is Brian Porter. I've been with Keller Williams since 2015, I think. So about 5 years. That was my first company that I ever went to. I'd read all the Gary Keller books. So, I knew a company I had to go to just based on the education I got before I even had my license. So this Ignite program, this is a little bit different. It's really cool. When I first started, the first thing I did was get into Ignite, the previous version of it. And it really helped me to launch my business, because I came into this as a paramedic previously. So I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to build a business, didn't even know how to use the printer at the office. So
Brian, sorry,
Yes.
I'm going to mute everybody really quick just to deal with the background noise,
Okay.
and then I'll unmute you. So hold on just a sec.
Gotcha, no problem.
Okay, can you talk? Go ahead and talk. Let's see.
Can you hear me now?
You're good. Thank you,
Okay,
Brian.
So do you know if can people unmute themselves to ask questions, or?
Yes.
Gonna be coming. Okay. Okay, perfect.
And right now you have 22 people on. There's been between 20 to 25. So yeah, and most of these guys have been on the meetings already and know how to do it. So
Okay,
thank
perfect.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and if at any point, if you do have a question, and I may not see the chat at this point because I got so many screens open. So feel free to mute yourself and chime in anytime. It's more of a discussion. So yeah, so when I first started, I got into Ignite knowing that if I didn't just study the people that were successful and do what they did, there was absolutely no way that I was going to be successful myself because I just had absolutely no idea what I was doing. So I really dug in and I did what Ignite asked us to do. And it worked out really, really well for me. So most of you know, or some of you know, that my background in real estate, the way I got started was door knocking. The thing I tell everybody, and I'll start with, is lead generation plus lead follow-up equals business every single time. So no matter what you need, whatever you need to do, if you can get those leads into your database and you follow up with them systematically, you're going to get business every single time. So today we're going to go over listing presentations. Let's see if I can get this to go with me. Okay, perfect. So we're going to be focusing on making seller listing presentations and getting listings. So let's start with, actually, before I get into it, does anybody have anything specific that they absolutely, like, burning questions that you want to go over today that we want to make sure that we hit? I will figure if I don't hear anything, you're either.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
not at the moment.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, anytime if you do have something that you want me to hit on a little bit more, just let me know, and I'd definitely be happy to expand. So we're going to start with what sellers want. So basically, actually, sorry, let me get to my next screen. So we're going to look at what sellers say they want and how that affects your conversations with them. We're going to talk about before the appointment. So the best listing appointments, they're continuous of ongoing conversation. And we'll talk about how to prepare yourself and your future seller to get the most out of the listing appointment. We're going to talk about the listing presentation itself. So we'll cover, what a good listing presentation should achieve and how. And then we're going to talk about the listing appointment. We'll talk about what you should do in your listing appointment to establish yourself as a local market expert and gather the information that you need to market and sell their home. So, the main goal for today is just going to be for you to understand what the expectations for a successful listing appointment are and where to find the resources to actually get started. Okay, so starting with how sellers found their home or found their agent. So 39% of sellers knew their listing agent or referred to their agent by a friend, neighbor, relative, and that's the highest percentage by far. 27% had their listing agent previously to buy or sell a home. 5% chose their realtor after being personally contacted by them. And 3% found their agent visiting an open house, and then the other 22% is other methods. It could be door knocking, really anything else, networking, all of that. The 39%, what I wanted to just kind of hit on is that 39% doesn't necessarily mean that you knew them before real estate. So it could just mean that you added them to their database, like I was talking about previously, and you just followed up with them enough so that they know, like, and trust you. And so that 39% could just, it's not necessarily just people that were, friends and family previously. The majority of my business at this point actually comes from my database of people that I found through door knocking. And at this point, we have a relationship, and I would put them into that category. Talk about first impressions. So obviously first impressions are huge when you're going to these listing appointments, even if the seller knows you personally, or they've been in your database for years, or it's a friend or family member. They want to know that you have what it takes to get their home sold quickly and for the most money possible. So you need to come in prepared no matter who you're meeting with, and you need to sound as confident as you possibly can. So even if you're not confident yet, maybe it's your first listing appointment, as long as you have a good structure for your listing appointment, those bullet points to where, these are the 3 or 4 main things I want to make sure I hit. If you have those down, and you have just a few of your objection handlers down, so you're not fumbling through that, and you've got good material, you have the ability to sound confident. So just make sure that you know that material kind of backwards and forwards. And at the end of this, if anyone stays on, I'll share with you exactly what my listing presentation looks like from top to bottom. So just the order, what I cover, and what I bring with me. And it's going to be very similar to what they're talking about here. I'll break it down into a little bit more detail. Okay. One thing I wanted to bring up is this. So I've actually taken a lot of listings in the past from, when being in competition with other agents, whether it's a family member, friend, mega agent in the area, whatever it may be. And one thing I've noticed is the more the other agent thinks they're going to get the listing, the less likely they are actually to get the listing. So I took one a while back where, I went in, I was the second agent in, the first agent in was their best friend, which is always an interesting position to be in. So I was a little bit nervous about it, but I was like, you know what, as long as I come in with all the, the right material, I'll do the best I can. So I went in there, I brought in my listing presentation, my marketing strategy and all of that. And I really went in and I just presented as professionally as possible. And I actually took that listing. And so when I asked them, why did you choose me? I'm always looking to, better my business. So what was that deciding factor for you? And that's a question I like to ask if they hire me or if they don't hire me, because I want to know either way. And the reason that they hired me was because they came in with their family member. That first person that came in was their family member, and they brought in 2 pieces of paper. One was a quick CMA. And the other was actually, it was a stack of papers. It was the listing agreement. So all they had was a quick CMA saying, hey, well, this is the average price point in the area. This is what we should list at. Sign here on the dotted line. And so at that point they said, you know what, let's meet with one other person. When I came in with all that material that we're going to talk about, I was able to take the listing very quickly on the spot. So keep that in mind, even if it's your best friend. This is an extremely important sale for them. It's a big deal, especially in this area. And so you want to make sure that you're not taking advantage of the relationship, because it doesn't always work out that way, or it doesn't always work out well. So what sellers want. So besides being professional, friendly, and likable, sellers have a specific objective that they want you to help them achieve. So 21% of them want help in marketing their home. 21% want help marketing their home. 20% want to make sure it sells in a certain time frame. 19% want help pricing competitively. 16% want advice on improvements to improve their sales price. And 13% want help finding a buyer. So only 11% stated that they wanted help with the paperwork. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. So when I first got in, I had a tendency to just really dwell a little bit too much on how much I'm, my ability to read contracts and negotiate based on those contracts and all of that. And nobody cares. People want to know that you can sell their house, in a short amount of time for the most money possible. So, of course they need your help for the paperwork, but it's important to note that it's actually at the bottom of their list. So I would probably spend the least amount of my time in that listing appointment actually going over that. All right. Another thing to remember is that the number one complaint that sellers have is about their agent is just bad communication. That is the number one complaint that they have. So they don't know it yet in the listing appointment, but communication is going to be a top priority for them. So one thing that I do is I always bring that up in the listing presentation, and they always seem to really appreciate it. So I'm able to set myself apart from other agents right then and there. So I just tell them, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the number one complaint people have about their agent is lack of or bad communication. So that's a top priority for me. I believe that if you have to reach out to me to ask a question that I should have already answered, that's a failure on my part. So because of that, I'll be in touch every few days, whether or not there's actually something new to share. If everything's going well, I still want to make sure that you have that update, because, if I feel like you've had to reach out to me, that's not a good thing, because how long have you been thinking about that problem and been nervous about it before you actually brought it up? So I basically, in the listing appointment, right after my value proposition, I want to give them that kind of expectation. And I've always gotten an incredibly good reaction from that. And just make sure that you follow through with that, because it really is true. If during the transaction, they're sitting around wondering for 3 days whether or not a buyer, let's say a buyer hasn't removed their contingency yet and it's the day of, and you don't communicate with them that day at all. If they have to get a hold of you that night to find out what's going on, they've already been nervous and upset about it for quite some time. So staying on top of that is key. And the process to listing. So when you have a lead that has expressed interest in selling their home, there are a few steps that you want to take to convert that lead into a listing. So some of the steps are optional based on your personal style and how motivated the seller is to let you list their home. But in general, you want to follow these steps. So first, you got the pre-listing questionnaire. You ask the potential seller the pre-questionnaire questions to determine their expectations, motivation, and how soon they want to sell. So that's something that you would do over the phone. A good pre-listing call will help you to learn their objections as well. So that's one thing that I want to do, if none else, is just confirm the appointment, confirm their motivation, and just ask them, do you have any concerns? What are your main concerns going forward in selling your home? Because if they let me know if they have a pricing concern, if they have commission concerns and things like that, I've had people tell me right off the bat, hey, our main concern is we keep getting a letter in the mail saying that this person will do it for 3%. And so what is your commission? And so I'll never tell them over the phone. I'll just let them, it's those commissions are negotiable by law. And I'd love to share with you what my marketing plan looks like so that we can decide what that commission is going to be based on your home. Because depending on how much work I'm going to have to do, that might change. And so I don't give them an exact number. We're going to go over that in the listing appointment. But because I know that they have that objection or they at least have that concern, I can come in armed with information about, what's maybe some of the discount agents are doing in the area as far as list to sale ratio, time on market, and all of that. If I know that it's a pricing objection, I can practice my objection handlers for that, or make sure that I really have solid comps to go over with them so that we can have that conversation later. So learning those objections ahead of time is key. Then scheduling listing appointments. So after you understand how motivated the seller is, you got to set the listing appointment. So in this, if you're selling with the area that we're in right now, I always let my mentees know I would set the appointment no matter what, as long as they're thinking about selling at some point, like in the next 12 months, even 18 months sometimes for me, because here's the thing, you're going to hear a lot about pre-qualifying. If they're not ready to go in the next 3 months, don't go for it. Our price point is so high that I feel like people are starting to have those conversations pretty early with real estate agents. And I want to get in and I want to solidify that relationship, especially if I found them through door knocking and it wasn't a friend or family member, something like that. If we don't have that great of a relationship yet, we've met once, maybe I've called them once, they've gotten drip emails or whatever it may be, but we don't have a real relationship yet. I want to get in early because the chances are what works out, but usually works out for me is 12 months later, they don't even interview another agent, so as long as I have that, I'll go over, I'll even give them my marketing strategy, all of that. We'll go over their current value of their home if they want to do that. But the point is just to get a real connection so that when, we stay in contact for the next few months, those are better conversations at that point. And typically I don't have any more competition after that. So sending a pre-listing packet, you can send an email, you can do mail. I've heard of people doing all kinds of different pre-listing packets. And basically for me, the pre-listing packet, I don't put a whole lot of information in it. Personally, I don't put my marketing strategy in it. I don't put the CMA in it because those are things that I personally like to go over in person. So you can do whatever you want in that sense. Personally, I bring those two items at least separately. So in pre-listing packets, I would do like reviews, what clients have to say. If you don't have reviews, you could do information about your office or your team that you're on or whatever it may be, office stats, things like that. You can include things like sample transfer disclosure statements and seller property questionnaires and all of that too. And I'll explain that later because those are things that I go over personally in the listing appointment. So if I can have them get that early, that's great as well. It's just less things that I have to bring with me. But the main thing about the pre-listing packet is just setting yourself apart, because almost nobody does it. And so if you're the only agent that's doing that, you're gonna look really good. So you could do it through email, you could do it through mail. I've heard people doing couriers. And a quick tip, something that I'm actually gonna be starting to try, sorry, I'm losing my voice. One thing that I'm gonna be doing personally is I'm going to be picking up like a $200 tablet. And I'm just going to put my whole pre-listing packet on that and have that couriered over, because when they get that, they can look at it. They can watch a video about me saying, hi, I'm so glad that we're able to meet next Thursday, whatever it may be. So whatever you can do to set yourself apart. But if you get that pre-listing packet, you're probably going to be the only agent that does it. All right. So let me get to this. Okay, so before the appointment, so you're going to want to do more listening than talking. That's the main thing. If you haven't read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, I would highly recommend it. But basically the bottom line is, when you're going to this listing appointment, they care about the result that you can achieve. That's their main concern. And then they also care about what they have to say. So even if you're having a conversation to build rapport, for instance, I had somebody that was very into, this is actually a funny story because in Bold, they tell a story that's very similar. And this is actually a story that happened to me. I went in and I was talking to them about fishing because I noticed they had fishing stuff on the wall. We had a great conversation about it. But what I noticed very quickly was that anytime I would start to talk about my experiences with fishing, he started to completely lose interest. And then he would come back and he would give his story about fishing. So what I learned to do is just keep asking him questions. But he wanted to tell me his stories. The only rapport building I needed was for him to know that I also like to fish. And then I just threw it back to him. The main thing is, though, is to get back on point. Because I ended up actually not getting that listing. We spent about half of the conversation talking about it. And then he ended up actually inviting me to go on a charter with him, but I didn't get the listing. So keep that in mind when you're building rapport. Don't get too stuck in it. But again, just remember that open-ended questions, asking them, questions just to keep them talking. That's going to help them to understand that you're a good conversationalist, or they'll at least have the impression that you are. People work with who they know, like, and trust. And so if they feel like they're getting that from you, that's going to give you a huge leg up. All right. So let's talk about the grouping our leads, especially now in, being in a shift. We want to make sure that we're focusing on the best leads first, and we're not letting anything fall through the cracks. So does anybody know what a C seller would be to you? If you were to group a C seller in your database, what would that look like?
Someone who said they want to go out feet first.
Yeah. Well, and I would call that a D seller. So for me, that would be a D seller. I would be deleting that person from my database, unless they're a really good source for referrals. I'm sorry, technical difficulties here.
CB put down someone not so motivated, only the right price. Someone who says that I'll sell, but only if it's at this certain price.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be a C to me. A C also would be, according to this, would be somebody that is willing to do business 61 days or more out. So that's what this says. For me, you have to come up with who is a C seller for you in your market currently. Because for me, I would say personally, I would not say a C seller is somebody that's 2 months out. For me, that's a pretty hot lead. And so you have to come up with those own parameters, but that's a good rule of thumb. I like that. If it's somebody that, I would sell, like Renee is saying, but I would have to find the right perfect house, and then it would make sense. If you have that person that's kind of like 50% motivation and or it's kind of far out there, they're more of a future lead, that would be a C seller. What about a B seller? Anybody have any ideas about a B seller? So a B seller would be essentially, it says somebody that is planning on selling within 15 to 60 days. So for me, that would be probably closer to an A seller. So you really have to figure out how do you want to work that. But an A seller is somebody that wants to do business within the next 14 days. Now, for me, basically what I would take from that is you really just want to make sure that the people in your database are grouped at some level. So it doesn't need to be exactly those metrics, but you want to make sure that they're grouped in that level. What I do personally is I create all three of those in my database, and I'm constantly looking at those, and I'm constantly reorganizing them. So I'm constantly taking my C's. Do I need to make them a D? Do I need to take my C? Do they become a B? Does the B become an A? and is keeping them in front of you all the time. Because if they get lost in the database, once you add 1,000 or more people in your database, there's no way they're going to be able to keep track of everybody. So making sure that they're constantly in front of you. Within Command, I can click on just my pipeline and I can see, okay, who is my pipeline? Who's going to come up? I know they're going to work with me and they're next. I've also got hot leads, 0 to 6 months, all of that stuff, so that I can isolate those people and make sure that nobody is missing a task or nobody's missing a follow-up. Okay. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about the pre-listing goals. Anybody have any questions about anything or comments from where we are so far? Okay. So once you've pre-qualified the seller and scheduled the listing appointment, you want to send the pre-listing packet. You can find that pre-listing packet in your Ignite toolkit. If you don't know how to access the Ignite toolkit, let me know after the class, and we can go over that as well. So in the pre-listing packet, you're going to have a few main goals. First, it's going to be stating your value. And so just know your unique value proposition would be my main suggestion for that. You really want to have that down. And you might tweak that UVP as the market changes. And so, depending on, so for instance, I would say, right now I'm telling my clients, and when I'm going from that, especially when I'm in the listing appointment, I'm going from the pricing into my marketing strategy, but even in the pre-listing packet as well, I'll just let them know that, what I do differently as a real estate agent in this area is I put the same time, money, and into every single marketing, every single home I sell. So that's basically it, is I'm putting the same amount of my time and finances into every home, regardless of what the market's doing. So what that means is, if it is a hardcore seller's market, I'm still going to do all of the things that I would need to do to sell your home in a market that is cooler. And if I was in, a really hot, cool market, I'm going to do all of the same, I'm going to make all of the same expenditures as well. So it's basically just coming up with, what is your unique value proposition? So maybe it's something like, I have a grassroots approach. I'm an agent that likes to have a really grassroots approach to where I'm meeting people in person, but I mix that with a highly targeted internet marketing campaign so that I make sure that I'm hitting as many people as possible, getting your home as much exposure as you can possibly get. And in the Bay Area, having an agent that really understands how to promote your listing online is extremely important. So just having a quick thing that you can say, it doesn't matter, I would just say, just make sure that it's 45 seconds or less. So it's kind of that elevator pitch that you can just spit out really, really quickly and just have that down. And you can put that into your pre-listing packet as well. Pre-selling is the second thing. It builds sellers' confidence and answers questions in advance of the presentation. Sellers use an agent because they want advice and expertise. Making them feel like they better understand the process is an important part of your value proposition. Many sellers are just intimidated by the process. So a little clarity will go a long way. And you'll know kind of based on who you're talking to. You may know already, but especially when you're making those pre-qualification calls, you're going to understand what kind of client you're talking to. You might have somebody that just wants to chat. And that's going to be a very different client from somebody that's got an engineering background and they want to know every step of the process. And so in that pre-listing packet, I will actually put, I will actually add things like, what does escrow look like? What does the offer process look like? And things like that. So in the case that it is that engineering type and they're going to feel more comfortable if they have clarity throughout the process, they have that. Saving time. So the pre-listing packet tackles common obstacles to make the consultation shorter and smoother. And again, having that pre-listing packet, you're probably going to be the only one that sends that out. So that's, for me, that's the biggest thing, is just setting myself apart. Sorry. Okay. So let's go into the pre-listing packet. Actually, you know what? That might be kind of hard to do over this. So I'm just going to skip over that. So let's go to the pre-listing presentation. So listing presentation. So There we go. So the purpose of the listing presentation is to get the seller to list with you. You achieve that by doing three things: creating a great impression to build the seller's confidence in you as their real estate agent, share your price recommendation, the initial list price of the property, and get your reasoning behind it, and explain how you believe that price is designed to get their home sold in the shortest amount of time and for the most money possible. And that strategy for the pricing is going to change depending on what market you're in. For instance, 2 years ago, we might have listed something for 900,000 and sold it for 1.1 million, where that's a very different strategy now. So you want to go over the strategy with them and how it pertains to the current market. And then just set expectations for how you'll market the home and work with the sellers. So just like the pre-listing packet, you don't have to figure this out for yourself. There are actually designs within Command that you can use to create your listing presentation. I won't go over how to do that today. There are classes for it, but it's pretty simple and they're very customizable. So I would check those out. If you don't have, you may also have access to Michael Lewis Marketing. If you do have access to that, that's the listing presentation that I use. And I've had I've got good feedback from that one. So that would be something that I would look into. Looking into the needs. This is one thing that I find a lot of agents actually skip right over. And it's extremely important. You want to know what is most important to them. You want to know what their motivation is, when they need to be, where they need to be, why that's important to them, and what their expectations of you are. Because if you can take those down and know exactly what they're looking for, you can make sure that you're tailoring your communication to that. And beyond that, if you know what their motivation is and you dove into it, and you've asked them questions, they tell you, okay, well, I need to move to Austin by July. And you ask, okay, well, what's important about being in Austin by July? Why is that important to you? So you're really getting to the heart of their motivation. And if you can do that, that's going to help you later on, especially when you take the listing, to always bring them back to that motivation. So in the case that they end up in a situation where they have an offer, they only have the one, and it's not exactly what they were looking for, you can always bring them back to that motivation to make sure that they understand, take the emotion out of it. Let's just get this done so you can get to, Austin by July, so that you can be with your family. What is that going to mean to you? When you can shorten that commute from a 4-hour plane ride to 15-minute car ride. So just bringing them back to that is going to be huge. So don't skip over the needs page of your presentation. That's absolutely.
Brian, let me ask, is this presentation in the toolbox?
It should be, yes. Yeah, there should be 2 designs. Actually, I'll double check on that. I think it's in the toolbox. If it's not, it's within designs and Command.
Okay, because it looks pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's interesting. I'm going to be completely redoing my my listing presentation. What I will say is, don't get too caught up in making your listing presentation perfect before you actually go on a listing. That was something that really helped, stopped me. Is I just didn't feel like I had the prettiest materials or whatever it may be. Well, I learned a couple of things. One, nobody else was really bringing materials at all. And so just the fact that I was bringing good information put me ahead of everybody else. And secondly, nobody was really reading anything that I brought anyway. So just the fact that I was bringing it in, I could kind of walk them through it. For the most part, as far as I know, that stuff kind of just gets put on the counter and doesn't get really looked at by most people. But it looks good and it sets you apart. I was terrified of taking listing presentations at the beginning, and I finally just put together a quick listing presentation that I could use. It's not that great, doesn't look awesome, but it works. And 5 years later, I actually still to this day haven't really changed it, and it hasn't hurt me one bit. So don't get too caught up in that. Just set those appointments. You can put together your listing presentation very quickly. Okay, get on the same page here. Okay, so presenting the listing presentation, there are plenty of scripts for your listing presentation within it would be in Connect, but it's in your toolkit as well for Ignite. I would say, scripts are great, and I absolutely 100% think that you should really, really have those down. However, if you don't have verbatim a listing presentation script down, don't let that stop you from taking a listing presentation. If you can get the listing appointment, take the listing appointment. And I would say, just have your 3 main goals. If you haven't really memorized anything yet, if you have your 3 main goals of what you want to accomplish while you're there, and you've got good information to give them, just get in there and make sure that you have your objection handlers down. I would say, if I had to choose between having my perfect listing presentation script completely memorized from start to finish versus having my objection handlers, 6 or 7 of those just 100% at the tip of my tongue, I'd probably take the objection handlers every day. So, work on your listing presentation, but don't let that stop you from actually getting into the listing appointment. You'd be surprised how easy it is to keep a listing presentation just flowing when you actually get there and you're just in communication with the other side. And I'll share with you the structure at the end of this of what that looks like for me. Okay. Sorry, I'm all over the place here. Okay, so seller objections, we kind of just covered that a little bit. You've got some objection handlers in your Ignite toolkit as well. Okay, so the listing appointment. It's the time to show off your hard work and get the listing. This is where we get to finally, this is where we get to really shine. So, be prepared for it, come with good information, but again, don't let that stop you from actually taking the appointment. Remember to update the opportunity in command as well. Just a quick side note, when you make the listing appointment, when you move the opportunity through the pipeline, your probable income metric in command will update as well. So, I like to put everything, all of my opportunities in command, even if it's just nurturing or it's post-listing appointment, but it was kind of early, whatever it may be. Make sure you're moving those into command and putting that information in there, because when you can start to look in that and see, okay, I've got $300,000 in potential income here, it really keeps you focused on making sure that you don't let any of those fall through the cracks. When you're actually assigning numbers to it, it's going to make you really make sure that you don't actually lose any of those, especially in a shift. Every single lead you have is gold. So home walkthrough. When you arrive at the potential seller's home, it's important to establish yourself as a knowledgeable and professional agent right away. So greet your potential clients, thank them for the opportunity, and ask them if you can leave your things in the kitchen while you conduct a walkthrough. So this is going to, within KW, some of this is going to talk about, asking if you can just take a look at the home by yourself, if they could, look over your your packet or whatever it is, and you want to go tour the home. For me personally, that's not something that I do a whole lot of. I personally like to walk through with them so that they can point out things that that are special to them. So that, you can definitely go through the house on your own, but it is something that I do differently, is I just let them know, you've been in this house for a long time, if they've been in the house for a long time. And so you probably have your favorite, parts of the home, your favorite parts of the yard, a view that's really special to you. And, those are things that I like to include within my marketing to really add a personal touch for the buyer, that, so they can see themselves living here like you have. Is that okay? And it's always okay, because it kind of brings them into the fold with me. It gets us kind of on the same team. It makes it so that we're like working together already. So that's something that I do that's a little bit differently, but if you want to tour the home on your own, you can certainly do that as well. And then closing the deal. So, the final point of the listing appointment is to get the seller to sign with you. The closing script is in the Element script book, but it's also on page 13 of the participant guide, which you should have. Does anybody not have the participant guide? Okay. So we probably won't do a whole lot of role modeling today. I'm going to kind of skip over some of this interactive stuff because that's going to be pretty difficult, but we'll hit what we can. So anybody have any questions of what we've covered today so far? Otherwise, I'll kind of move on and we'll start talking. I want to recap what's going on at Ignite, what we're supposed to be doing every day, and then I'll go over what my listing presentation looks like.
Brian, the one question I had is, I think I heard you say that you actually suggest to the seller exactly what price you think they should put it on the market, as opposed to showing them and letting them decide. Does that make sense? You know where I'm going.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I typically what I do is I have them make the decision for me.
Okay.
So I want to guide them into the direction of the right of the right price, but I don't want to up and say it myself. I will occasionally have a client that will just say, "Hey, well, you're the expert. What do you think we should sell it for?"
That's what they always say. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that sometimes. It's actually, it's kind of rare for me to get that anymore because I'm usually pointing them in the direction enough to where they kind of understand where I'm coming from. It's like we're making the decision together. So typically the way I do it is when I'm going over the market analysis, let's say I have 6 homes. Let's say that we have 6 homes on that CMA and they're all sold. Let's just assume everything on there sold. And let's say we've gone through the open house. So going into that, I'm going to do that CMA and I'm going to probably have an idea of what their home looks like based on what it looks like on Google Maps or what I've asked them on the pre-listing, presentation, or sorry, the pre-listing call. Once I get in, I actually do that tour. I'm gonna understand where that falls into that CMA. And so typically what I'll do is I'll start at the top, and if they're in the middle, I'm gonna hit that first one. I'm like, okay, so this is the first one that we have. I added it because it does have similar bedroom, bathroom count. And it is a similar square footage, and the lot size is very similar and it's very close to your home. However, what you'll see with this one, your home is very, very nice. This home, they've basically gutted the entire house. And so essentially what this is it's just a brand new home. And so that's why it's getting a premium. And so basically I'm setting that one way apart and helping them to understand that that's just because it's the same square footage does not mean that they're going to get the same price. So I'll go through the pictures and then I will kind of show them, okay, so you can kind of see here, they've done this, whatever it may be. I'll point out things that I know are expensive. So, you can see that stove alone was $15,000. So, the finishes in this house are very, very nice. And so I'll go very quickly through it. And then the next house, if it's still way, way nicer, I'll go very quickly through that one as well. When I get to the middle, I just stall for like most of the time. So, if I've got those 2 listings, usually I have 1 or 2 that's very, very similar to their house, or it's at least a somewhat decent comp. And I'll spend the majority of my time right there, just helping them to see that how similar it is. So you can see that this house is very nice, but it is fairly original. They haven't really done much with the kitchen, haven't done much with the bathrooms. And then I'll point out the positives, but I'll point out what makes it different from those houses up top. And I will go through the pictures much more slowly so that they can really see the comparisons. Same thing with the next one. Then when I get to the homes that are not nearly as nice, I just blow through them really quickly again, but I use those homes below to pump up their home. So I kind of I started with basically pumping up that first house, making them understand that they're probably not at that level very, very nicely, then stall for a while, and then I pump up their home using the homes that are at the bottom. I'll let them know, you're obviously not even in the same ballpark as this home, depending on what it may be. Now, if it's a total fixer, you're not going to be able to do that. But if you're at the top or you're in the middle, you can really focus them on, where they need to be. So, but once I finish that, I just ask them, so based on what we're seeing here, and based on the homes that you can see that you're most similar to, where would you think would be a good idea to put it on the market? What price do you think we should start with? And so I've already kind of focused them in a certain direction. So typically they don't throw it back to me at that point. And typically they give me 9 times out of 10 people are smart, and they just don't want to look dumb. And so at that point, I basically made it so that if they say that they want that top price, it just doesn't look like a smart move, and people don't necessarily like to feel like they're not making the smart move.
So the other thing I heard you say, and this is something I've never done, and I like the idea, what I heard you say is you bring all the pictures of the listings. So you bring the listing and all the pictures on that particular listing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so the way I do it is actually, I do it in a couple of ways. When I first started, I bought things like Cloud CMA and all of that. And I had these fancy looking presentations and stuff. That's great. It didn't get me any more listings whatsoever. And so really what I do now is my CMA, I go to the MLS and I print out just the client full with pictures. So I print that out And I leave that with them with the quick CMA stapled to the top. And I'll go over like everything I bring in a minute, but that's how I do the CMA. Quick CMA on top so I can quickly reference, what everything was doing, days on market and all that, list of sale for all the homes. And then if you flip through, you can see the information about the home, and then we can go through the picture. So I leave that with them. I don't go over it on the paper. I bring a tablet. And so with the tablet, I just send that same, that thing that basically that PDF that I've saved and printed out for them. I send that to my email, and then I save that to my iPad that way. And so when I go in, I can go over that with them. I start at the top, and it allows you to expand. The pictures are high enough quality, for the most part, if you're using if they're homes that were shot with a good photographer, they're high enough quality that you can actually expand them pretty well without them distorting too badly, or at least give them a really good idea. You could use the client portal as well, to swipe through, and you'll get the full quality pictures. However, I just find that to be kind of clunky, or if the internet's not working right, it can make it difficult. So if you just send that PDF to a tablet, you can scroll through and you can expand something and just be like, so you can see this kitchen is absolutely incredible. They've redone everything, and you kind of, reduce it and then move on to the next one. That's what I do. And it helps because it helps them to see, if you can show them how similar in pictures their home is to the other homes, then that's going to help for sure.
One other question. You had talked about, I'm sorry to keep asking these questions, but you're doing a phenomenal job. You had mentioned about your marketing plan, and I don't know if you're going to address this later, but do you leave that with them?
I leave it with them at the listing appointment. So I'll tell you, me personally, I don't do an extensive pre-listing packet. It's something that I'm adding to now, but I don't give them my marketing plan. I don't give them the CMA or any of that. I don't like to have. I want to be able to, with the CMA, I want to be able to present it the way I present it. So the way I could just explain how I do it. If I've already allowed them to look at everything, they're going to have more time to come up with their own ideas of why this was this or why this wasn't, whatever it may be. So I want to bring that in with my marketing strategy. That's a huge part of my presentation. I spend I spend at least a third of my time on that marketing strategy, and I want to be able to deliver that personally. Otherwise, I feel like it loses a little bit of its power.
But you do leave it with them.
I do. I'm sorry. Yeah, I do leave it with them after the listing presentation. And I actually tell them, I want to leave this with you so that you can, basically it's an answer key for you. You can look through this and make sure that I am in fact doing the things that I told you that I was going to do. But it'll give you kind of a direction of where we're at. Because in that marketing plan, I actually detail after. You can go through, it'll say, from pre-listing all the way through what the offer due date might look like to what's going to happen during escrow. And so again, with the reason I put it together was because I was going into a listing appointment with somebody that I knew was just it was an engineer. It was all business. They wanted to know every single detail. And I knew that the only way for me to make sure that I give them every single detail and I do it well is to just make a list for them. And once I did that, a list from pre-listing, before the appointment or at the appointment all the way through close, I knew that was going to give them that clarity, and it actually has worked out for me. And I continue to use it on every listing appointment today. I can email that out, or if anybody actually, there was a lot of people. So if you want to email me, I can send you some of these materials that I'll go over in a minute. And I'll send it in a document that you can edit. So that would be, you can just, delete my name or whatever you want to do, or add or delete or whatever. So any more questions about this material before I quickly go through just the daily 10-4 and all that, and then we'll go through my listing presentation. Okay. So how's everybody doing on the daily 10-4? Any questions about this? Any concerns, or how do I do this in the current market type of a thing?
Hey, Brian, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I want to pipe in on this one. So is Jordan with us today? Jordan, are you on?
No, he's not.
Okay, no problem. He was teaching yesterday, and he was talking about, adding 10 contacts a day, having 10 conversations, doing 10 handwritten notes. And then he mentioned, well, we can't preview homes right now. So what could you do instead of that? And Brian, I know we talked about it yesterday in our Shift Book Club. Instead of previewing homes, you certainly still can be looking at homes on the internet. And it's a perfect opportunity for you to hone in on your skills in terms of pricing and stats, MLS stats. So I would recommend, if you're not feeling like you can preview homes right now, I would still be checking inventory in the neighborhoods that you're trying to become an expert in. And I would work on doing statistical analysis in those neighborhoods and maybe watch some MLS videos on how to do your CMAs and that sort of thing. So that's what I would recommend. The whole point in previewing homes is so that you get to know the inventory, which you can still do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday, and that's always been my suggestion to people when you're doing the home previews. You know, it is easier in person, but I'll kind of give you the strategy, and you can you know, if you're doing it in person, that's better. But otherwise, the way I did it when I first started is I would preview homes that were owner occupied at Broker Tour. Because it would be a little bit more difficult. You can get in them, but I didn't want to make families leave their house or whatever it may be, so I can preview it just as an agent if I could have gone at the Broker Tour. So that's what I'll do, and then I'll look at vacant properties. You know, you can usually go see those anytime. So what I would do is I would focus on the area that I like to work, and I would preview pretty much every home that comes on the market there, but at least pick a few of them every week and run at least 3 CMAs a week. Minimum 3 market analysis on those homes. So pick a house, and typically I'll pick an active home, because if it goes pending in 3 days, that's a pretty good indication that I already know that it probably went over. And so I'll pick a home that's active, and I will run all the comps like I would with a seller or a buyer. And then I will just write on the top of the page, you know, what do I think that home is then going to end up closing escrow for? And so I'll just keep those stacks of paper. About a month later, I'll pull those back out, and I will look it up on the MLS and say, okay, so I was $50,000 too high on this one. I was $80,000 too high on this one. I was $30,000 too high on this one. So now I'm starting to figure out a trend. I am typically, you know, way off in one way or the other. And so you can start to kind of, eventually you're going to figure out where the pricing needs to be. And that's going to give you that expert knowledge that people really need. Because we're in a market right now, it's easy to list a house for $900,000 and sell it for 1.1 million. It's a lot more difficult to figure out exactly what a house should be priced for. And that's what we get paid to do. And so I'm still doing this today because it's a moving target. We don't know where things are going to go. It might dip a little bit. It might stay the same, whatever it may be. But I'm going to continue to run these market analysis in my neighborhood because it's going to give me a good pulse on what's going on. So I think that's incredibly important. Let's see here. As far as the handwritten notes and all of that, I'm not sure how sorry guys. As far as the handwritten notes, don't discount that. That's one thing that I'm noticing a lot of people, you know, they'll make the calls or they'll preview the homes, but they just skip the handwritten notes because nobody does that anymore. But the point is nobody does that anymore. And so it's another thing that's going to set you apart. I've actually, I have what I tend to call my my pen pal clients in my database that I've got people in my database that I cannot get a hold of them via text, phone, email, pop by, really anything. But when I send them a handwritten card, I'll get a full page handwritten card back. And so I'll just respond with it like, you know, just like that. So don't discount that. I've gone to listing appointments and had people point to their refrigerator and show me that my handwritten card was on the fridge. And how that was, you know, they thought that was really cool. And none of the other agents that did were coming in for the listing appointment had actually done that. So that's huge. Okay, let me see here. So I don't think we're gonna be able to do script practice. That's gonna be kind of difficult.
Those are what they're supposed to be doing after your class is over.
Oh, that's right. Okay, got it. Okay, so what I think we'll do, because we have a little bit of time, is I'm just gonna run through what my listing presentation looks like, because it's really simple. And let's see if I can pull it up here. Because if you can reduce the barrier to entry, that's going to be huge. So I'm going to stop screen sharing if I can. Okay. Sorry, I got about a million things open here. Okay. So for my listing appointment, I'm going to give you the items I take with me. Don't worry about taking notes or anything. And this isn't the best way, I'm sure, but it's what works really well for me. And I'll email this to anybody that wants it. So you can take notes, or you can just let me know. I can send it to you. But what I take with me, I take the listing presentation. Again, what I use is the Michael Lewis marketing one. But you can obviously use one from Command Designs. Those are beautiful. So I'm probably going to be moving over to that one myself. I bring the comparable properties. So I bring the client full printout, again, like I said, with the photos on it. And I put that quick CMA on top of that. And that's what I leave with them. I also bring all of the recent activity within half a mile, regardless of whether or not it's comparable. Now, it sounds kind of silly. Why would you bring information for a 1,000 square foot house when you're at a 2,000 square foot house? The reason I do it is because like 50% of the time I'm going over the comparables, I will have someone stop me and say, oh, well, what about the house 3 doors down? I have no idea because it's not in my CMA. And so if I'm coming in as the neighborhood expert, and yet I only know about the homes that are on the market that are comparable to theirs, I don't look so great. So if I just print out just the homes in their general neighborhood, just with another quick CMA, I can quickly just look at that and be like, I actually don't remember off the top of my head. Let me take a look. And then I can give them the number. It works a whole lot better than just, oh, actually, I don't know. I didn't even know that was on the market. So that's why I bring that with me. I bring my iPad because, again, I save the PDF of that CMA there as well, so that I can expand the photos. With that, I also will show them, I'll use it for showing them just examples of my marketing websites that I have out there. So I'll usually save a URL and I'll put that in. They can see, what my marketing and photos and all of that look like. I bring a brochure from a recently sold property, as long as I'm using high quality marketing. And I use, really nice printouts. And so if you're going to use high quality marketing, I'll bring that in. And I also will bring that in with about, 1 or 2 other pieces from the neighborhood. So I'll actually swing by. I'll get there early. It's extremely important to be at these appointments on time. So typically I'm going to be in the neighborhood about 15 minutes prior to the appointment. And I'm going to drive by some of those comparable properties. I would recommend doing that because there are times that I've driven by a property and realized, oh my gosh, that's basically on an alley. That's why it was so much under all of the other comparables. And if I hadn't known that, I wouldn't have looked as good with the client. So I'll drive by those properties. And if they have flyers out in the box, if they're those cheap flyers, I'll even grab one. And I'll just remove the agent's information completely because I never want to badmouth an agent. I've gotten deals by building up other agents, even agents that I'm up against. I've never gotten a deal by badmouthing an agent. So I will remove all of that information. And it's just it helps me to show them the difference of the typical agent's marketing and my marketing. So that's why I bring that. I bring my marketing strategy, which is just it's basically from step 1, you're meeting with me, through close, and it will detail every single thing that we do in a transaction. And the reason I bring it is because, people just don't realize sometimes all that we have to bring to the table. And so it makes commission objections sometimes non-existent or easier to deal with. But it also just looks really cool because 75% of the activities that are on that is stuff that all agents have to do. It's stuff that all agents are doing. But when you put it onto a piece of paper, A, it gives them clarity, but B, it really shows them our value. And then about 25% of the stuff in there are the things that I do maybe differently or things that I do to go above and beyond. So the reason I bring that with me is because once I have a few main parts of my listing presentation, and one of those main parts is going over the marketing strategy. So if I have that whole piece of paper in front of me, I don't have to have anything memorized because I can just walk them through it. It's right there in front of me. So that's why I bring that. So I also bring a sample residential listing agreement, obviously the regular listing agreement. I bring a sample purchase agreement just so they can have that and start reviewing it ahead of time. I bring the sample transfer disclosure statement and the sample seller property questionnaire along with our KW importance of filling out the TDS form. The reason I bring those other forms with me is just I'm always trying to set myself apart. Anytime I can set myself apart and look like I'm looking out for the client, or I am looking out for the client in reality, that's going to help me for sure. And so I bring those and I just let them know, hey, most agents aren't going to leave this with you. They're not going to bring in, disclosures like this ahead of time. Don't worry, it's not a contract. I'm not going to ask you to sign anything. But the reason I bring it is because these two disclosures are the most important disclosures that you're going to give to a buyer, when we get a little bit farther on in this transaction, where you're going to be talking about anything that has been wrong with the house, anything that's been fixed, any remodels that you've done. And, for you to sit down at an appointment with me at a later date and try and fill this out in an hour, chances are you're going to forget things. And we want to make sure that when we hit the market as, with as much of the, with complete information as much as possible. So I'm going to leave this with you now. Go ahead and walk through the home and go room by room and just start taking notes. And then when we actually get to the point to where we're ready to go over those disclosures, I'll bring in a fresh copy and we'll go over it together. But at least at this point, you have a head start. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm helping them prepare. I'm helping myself because when I get to that disclosure appointment, they've already thought about pretty much everything. And so I can just kind of go through a few things that people sometimes forget. So it makes that appointment a whole lot shorter. But you may have noticed that we just went from, a listing appointment where who knows who you're going to work with. And we started going into a little bit of an assumptive close when I'm starting to talk about the next time we get together to go over disclosures. And then I leave those with them. And so not a lot of people will do that. And it's just another thing, just another piece of just something else you can leave with them, a little bit more information and help them to get started. So the order of the listing consult for me would be I introduce myself. And this is actually very similar to what we're seeing in the KW stuff as well. I introduce myself, I start building rapport, compliment the home. I ask where I'm going to leave my stuff. So just like they say in this material, leaving your stuff on the kitchen table, I'll just let them know, I'd love to go on a tour of the house with you so you can kind of point out things that are important to you. Where's a good place for me to leave this stuff so that we can go over it and sit down and talk a little bit more when this is done. So now they understand that we are going to sit down and talk a little bit more, and then I can drop my stuff there. And then when we go through the home tour, again, I'm going to let them know, I'm going to bring them onto my team and make it feel like we're working together. And I'll just let them know, hey, like I said before, you've been in this house for a very long time. So you know what's important to you. You've got your favorite parts, your favorite views. If you could just point those out to me, I can use that in my marketing for the buyer so that they have that personal touch, because people do buy out of emotion. And we want to make sure that we tell them what's important to you. So that's what I'm going to go through, and I'm going to walk through the house. So we're going to go room by room. My suggestion when you're going through the home, people do want to know, they want tips on what they can do to increase their value. They do want to know how to prep for sale, but they don't want to feel attacked. So don't feel like you can't tell somebody that they should paint a room or declutter. Just make sure that you're doing it, as nicely as possible. And so for me, I'm always attempting to point out one thing that I like about the home before I give them one thing that I think that they should change. So I'm giving them something, and there's always something. I know I've sold hoarder houses. So, I've walked into a home and I can't even see the floor and the paint, the walls are covered in smoke stains. And I walk in and I can just say, you know what? I absolutely love how much light's coming in through this room. And it's actually a really, really great size. I think this is going to work really good for, maybe if you had a couple of kids. So I'm doing something like that to where I'm giving them the positive, then I'm going to let them know what I would do to tweak it. And so whenever I give them something that I would change, I'll typically put myself in the same boat. So if I walk in and the house, the room is bright pink, I'm not going to tell them, oh, I think you should paint this room. I'm going to tell them, I really love the size of this room. This is really great. One thing that I think I would probably do is I probably go with a little bit more of a neutral color. Then I'll put myself in the same shoes and I'll say, I always tell my clients, there's a way that you live in a house and there's a way that you sell a home. And for me personally, the way I live in my house, it works well for me. I've got some really bold walls and I absolutely love it. However, if I were to put my home on the market, I would probably go with, and I'll tell them the color that I want them to paint their home, because, that's going to attract the most amount of buyers. If we've got 100 people that are interested in your home and 80% of them, are unsure about the color and 20% of them absolutely love it, we want to make sure that we don't lose the other 80%. And so we want to go with a neutral color if possible. Does that make sense? And so if I'm putting myself in the same boat as them, letting them know that I do the exact same thing. I do the same thing with clutter or big furniture. I'll tell them, the way I live my home, it functions extremely well for me. However, if I were to put my home in the market, I would probably move out as much as I possibly can, so that the rooms look bigger. So it's that kind of a thing where I'm always telling them that, we're on the same side. So once we do that, I'm gonna have a good idea of what the value is, and then we're gonna go over the market analysis, just like we were talking about before, where we're gonna skip over the ones that we really don't want them to look at too carefully, really have them hone in on the ones that are very similar to their home, and then have them give you the price. If they give you the price, it is so much easier throughout the rest of the transaction. If they feel like I made the decision for them, then it becomes my fault if something goes wrong. So if they make the decision, it definitely, it's going to be in your best interest. Just help them to make the correct decision. So then we'll go over the pricing strategy, what that's going to look like. And so if they are if we agree on price, however, homes are selling way more than what they're listed for, that's when you would have the conversation. I think it is worth $1 million, but probably, and you'll go over the strategy of, what you would do to list it a little bit lower in order to generate those multiple offers, whatever it may be. And then I switched to sales mode from there. So essentially, build rapport, tour the home, go over the pricing strategy, and then deliver the marketing strategy. And so right there is where I'm going to kind of flip things around, and I give my unique value proposition. And then I just walk them through the marketing strategy. So I can send that to anybody that wants it, but it's right there in front of you. And then when I get to the end of it, what I let them know is, especially if I know they're going to meet with another agent and they're definitely not signing that day, I'll just tell them, one thing that I would suggest, and I know that you're meeting with that other agent, and I totally get that. You want to make sure that you're comfortable with who you're working with. What I will tell you is make sure that you ask them for their marketing strategy, because if they cannot give you a physical list of what they're going to be doing to market your home, they probably are not going to do much to market your home. They're going to do what's called the 3 Ps of real estate. And I'll tell them what the 3 Ps of real estate are. They're going to put your house online. They're going to put it on the MLS. They're going to put a sign in your yard. They're going to put it on the line, and they're going to pray that it's going to sell. And so I'll go through that, because basically what that does is it sets them up for that next appointment to ask that next agent for their marketing strategy. And if they don't have a physical marketing strategy to give them, it's definitely going to help me going forward. So any questions about any of that?
No, that was really good.
Thank you. Yeah. So anybody that wants to, I'm going to put my email in the chat. So anybody, if you are interested in kind of an outline of what my listing presentation looks like, actually it's already in the chat. So yeah, it's the brian.porter@kw.com. I can send you just a list of what I do. And then if I'll send you a kind of an example of what that marketing strategy is. It'll be in an editable document. And if you want to just remove my name, put your name on that, dress it up, remove stuff, add stuff, feel free. But I'll tell you, it really has helped me for sure.
So Brian, at what point do you do the tour with them to see the house? In the beginning when you get to the house, or in the middle? When do you do the tour?
So I do the tour right off the bat. So yeah, basically and actually just to rewind really quick before I get into it, I will, when I get to the door, the first thing I do is I'm always going to be on time or like 1 minute early. Typically I try and be 1 minute early, and I'll tell you, they notice. And I have people all the time tell me how appreciative that they are, or that other guy didn't come in on time. Second thing I do is I just let them know, hey, shoes on or off. I always ask them, regardless. If the carpets are disgusting, I still ask them whether or not they want me to remove my shoes. They also appreciate that. So as soon as I do that, I just let them know, hey, thank you so much for letting me come by. I've been really excited to see your home. Where's a good place for me to leave this stuff so that we can sit down and have a chat once we get done taking a look? And then they'll point me usually to the kitchen, family room, whatever. We'll put the stuff down. It's like, well, so if you don't mind, if we could go on a quick tour and that's what I'm telling them, point out the things, blah, blah, blah. And then we do that right then and there. So, my order is going to be get there on time, build that rapport, set down my stuff, go on the tour, deliver the marketing strategy, the pricing strategy, deliver the marketing strategy, and that's it.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this, but on your commission, you said it's negotiable by law. what part would you take out to get the cheaper commission?
Right. And I don't typically, I don't even always say it's negotiable by law, to be honest. I just tell them it's negotiable. And sometimes I will, but I let them know, commissions are negotiable. And it's going to depend on what's involved with your sale. Because not all sales are exactly the same. I might need to put a lot more money into certain things. And so we'll want to talk about that at the appointment. Is that fair? And I never, if I don't have to give them the commission over the phone, I really don't want to. I've only done it once. I was backed into a corner and I had really no other option. It was either give them that or the appointment was off, and I didn't get the listing because they called the other guy and the other guy came down, and then I didn't get the call back. So I avoided at all costs. I want to show them what I bring to the table, because when they have the other agent, if they talk to another agent or whatever it may be, and that agent, let's say they're charging, 5% or whatever, and then I come in and I'm charging 5.5 or 6 or whatever it may be, but I'm showing them all of the things that I do, they're going to want to work with the person that's going to get them the most for their home.
But you're not saying, okay, I'll take this chunk of my marketing plan out and I'll give it to you for 5.5 instead of 6.
No. And so I have heard people that do, like a scale, so I charge 5%, for 5% I do this, for 6% I do this, for 7% I do that, whatever. I think that I'm sure it works great for people because a lot of people do it. Personally, I don't. For me, I'll tell you, I typically charge 5.5%. I may increase that to 6% as the market continues to shift, because if it's going to take me longer to sell a home, that is more work for me. In the past few years, it's been so quick that I don't mind charging 5.5%. And that's typically what I've done. I will very rarely drop my commission. So you really want to work on your objection handlers for that. The times that I will go down to 5% is, for instance, if it's like a $1.2 million home, I've got 3 agents I'm up against. I know that I'm probably on the high end, and I don't have to, stage the home or anything. If I'm not staging the home, that's going to save me, $3,000 or $4,000 right there on a larger home. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. And I know we're kind of late on time, so any other questions? Feel free to leave also if you need to. All good? Cool.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well,
Thank you so much, Brian. You did awesome.
thank
Wasn't
you.
that great, you guys? There was so much
thank you,
value in that.
Brian.
Thank you.
That was really
Great
helpful.
job, Brian.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and you've got my email. So if you have any questions or you need anything, let me know and I'll get that over to you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank
day.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Brian.
No problem.
Yeah.